Welcome, Alexa. I'm super excited to have you on today's episode, a fellow agency owner of Lex and Co Marketing. So, we have a lot to discuss today, but I know that we have a super focus and honing in on the concept of authenticity, being authentic, in yourself and your business and how
Yeah.
that translates through your brand, right? And then we're also going to touch
Yeah.
on the importance of leveraging and using your testimonials and how all those things pretty much tie together. So before we dive into all of those specifics, I know that you had like a crazy, career before you started your agency, working 80-hour weeks nonstop.
Oh, yeah.
What was that transition like? What made you finally take that leap to say, you know what, I'm done with this world and I want to start my own company?
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I have to go back to those times. Don't miss them uh, at all. But no, I think it was just you know what they always say, like when it rains, it pours. And I think I had a couple lows at one point. I think I had like at that point like a 9-year relationship end, and then I was like
Oh boy, yeah.
you throw yourself into work, and I
Mm,
threw myself in, and I just remember having a conversation with my boss and saying, you know what, I'm doing marketing and I'm doing finance for you. I'm doing both things. I cannot dedicate myself full time. And, can I just do marketing? And I remember he looked at me and he said, I will have to pay you 50% of your salary because marketing is not a full time job. And I
yeah,
remember
like how fucked
hearing
up.
that, right? I remember hearing
But
that and
wait,
being
but
like,
wait,
did that just
for
happen?
reference, yeah, no, but wait, for reference, like how long ago was this when he
This
said
was
something
back
like,
in, this was back in 20, it was 2020, actually. It was like
okay, so
right before
like
the
not
pandemic.
long enough ago for marketing not to be a relevant job. If
At
anything,
all.
it's the most relevant of jobs at that point.
You know what? It was a little not that I thought the pandemic was great at all, but once it centered around marketing, I was like, is it not? Is it not a full-time job now? Because that was the only way that people could get in front of people. And I was like,
Hmm.
and I think I knew, the leveraging of like videos and like once again authenticity, people are gonna hear that word a lot. Like
Hmm.
I knew that before it was cool for people to know that.
Right.
And I think that I really leaned into it and he didn't understand it. And I just remember hearing it and going, you know what? It was like the straw that broke the camel's back for me. I was like, I love this job. I love what I do, but I know what I bring and I know what I value. So I just remember being like, and I'm done.
Yeah.
And I gave my notice like right away. I think it was like 2 days later I gave my
You
notice.
had like this
And
like aha moment, right?
yeah, because you always want it to get better. I think in any job, when you get like really
Yeah.
comfortable and you love the people and you love the environment,
Mm,
you're like, I want to stay. And I was like, what am I staying for? Like, I knew I had the numbers to show, hey, I took you from a 6-figure to a 7-figure business. And someone is sitting there literally gaslighting you into being like,
crazy.
no, you're not doing enough. And I was like,
Yeah.
it'll never be enough. And I
You
was
know
like,
the
why don't I
thing?
do what I'm doing on a larger scale?
Yeah, the thing with marketing too, though, like they say when times are tough in the economy, marketing is usually the first thing that people cut, right? Because
Yes,
marketing and sales, as counterproductive as it actually is, it is the last thing that most businesses think about because they're like, oh, we need all of the people to operate to do the work, right? But they're not thinking about having the people that bring in the work, right? The people in sales, the people in marketing
yep,
are the ones that bring in the work for the people that are doing the work to do, if that makes sense.
it is.
And so,
Yes,
right?
it is the
So,
only job. It's the only job that like people are like, oh, anyone could do your job. And I'm like, nowhere else on this earth,
mm,
like you wouldn't look at a nurse, you wouldn't look at a doctor, you wouldn't be like, anyone can do your job. But people are like, oh, don't you just click buttons? And I'm like, that is just the most outdated thing. Like, what do you think I do? Like, do you think I sit and twiddle my thumbs?
okay, wait. So let's
Like,
say, what do you do then? So let's be like a little bit more like granular. What is it that you're doing
yeah.
on a day-to-day basis now that you're running Lex and Co?
Yeah, I love this question because every day is different. And I think that's why I love it. But I mainly focus on strategy for business owners. So I work with doctors, dentists, lawyers. I have like a startup gym in Toronto that I'm working with. I really like focusing in on those business professionals, those people that need marketing but don't even know how to conceptualize why they need marketing.
Mm,
And I work on the strategy component of what are you putting out on social media, because once again, there is this thing in this industry where, any doctor or lawyer, they post like graphics on Instagram and they're like, see, I'm on social media. And I'm like, oh, that is so far from what you should be doing. But,
Just
and I
existing is different than actually being active on,
yes.
the platforms.
Yeah. And you know what? To be fair, the trends move really fast. There's
Hmm.
always a new app. Like people are genuinely confused when it comes to the social media realm. And so I really take, what they're trying to accomplish and what their like bread and butter is and figure out a way to communicate that effectively organically online. Because like another thing that's really astounding to me is like a lot of people are on social media and they're doing what they see everybody else doing, even if it's
Yes.
not authentic to them. And I remember one client, I was like, why did you do that? And they were like, oh, because it was like a sound that
A
everyone was
trend.
doing. And
Yeah. Hmm.
yes. And I'm like, you know what? Like, do you want likes or do you want something that sticks? Because I think people need to learn to differentiate the two because I think everyone is like doing things that are very performative and everyone is like a stretch. But there's a lot of people online that are doing things that are very performative that they don't know what it says. Like you're doing something and I'm like, yeah, but what does that say about you and your brand? And
Mm.
they're like, it was a trend. And I'm like, okay, so you don't know. That is the
So
opposite
you're
of
just
having a strategy.
following everybody else, right? And not being like true to yourself. That's so crazy. And it's just such a weird mess up world. So like what advice would you give to someone who's like, "Hey, like I want to follow the trends because the trends are the things that have the potential to go viral and,
Yeah.
but then also being authentic to like who you are." And it's like, okay, yeah, so maybe some trends like fall into those buckets, but also it's like who's to say you can't also be the trendsetter?
Yes. I'm like, there are things, and I said this the other day, there are certain things that are not trends, but they're always going to last. So like having your business journey, you can make that from a trend. You could do that sitting and talking to a camera. You can do it in an entertainment type style. There are so many things that you can do with that, and that will outlast any trend.
Mm,
So sometimes you don't always need to focus on those specific trends. And I think though that's why people work with people like us because we're able to see past the facade of that. It's just in the industries that I play in, a lot of them try to do it themselves because they
hmm.
don't know what they don't know. And
Yeah.
they're like, well, and it goes back to that age old, like, if I have all these bills, like, why am I going to hire a marketing person? Like, that's not going to help. And I'm like,
Yeah.
okay.
Complete opposite, but okay.
Yeah.
Believe what you
Yeah.
want.
So like for people, I usually say like I'm okay if people want to jump on a trend if they can bring it back to like who like it representing them. And then on top of that, you have people that are like following these TikTok gurus and like here's the thing, I love watching a video or two, but you're trying to fit a square peg in a round hole. So like people are jumping on trends and I'm like, you look uncomfortable doing that.
Mm.
Like why are you
People
doing that?
feel
And they were
that.
like, I didn't
Yeah.
want to.
Yeah.
Yeah. And people feel like when you're uncomfortable, it's like when people are like, oh, the camera adds 10 pounds, it also adds a whole, like it takes off your layer of vulnerability. It just like,
Hmm.
like brings you in and people are like, that doesn't look natural. People can smell
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. For sure. And I think a lot of people kind of like force themselves to do it because they're like, oh, this is the thing. This is what we have to do. And, there's a difference between like kind of pushing yourself into doing something that you're uncomfortable with, even though like it could work for you, right? Because not everything like looks great and is perfect the first time you try. It doesn't mean that it's
Yep.
not for you, but we're not saying that necessarily. We're saying like if you're jumping on something just because it's a trend, but it doesn't align like at all with what you're doing.
Yep.
And like you're talking about something that's just like completely out of left field,
Uh,
or even if you think like it's not completely out of left field, but it's just not exactly a representation of like who you are and who your business is, then like yeah, people can see through that for sure. So I think it's like a good balance is important because like there are certain trends and memes and whatever that you could flip and get creative and really make your own for your brand
yes.
for sure. But I think what you're trying to say too is that evergreen content that can live on forever, that communicates, like what your business does and what you stand for, that people can go back on at any point and still like connect with and resonate with, as opposed to clicking some random reel that you created 2 months ago, and instead of being educated on something, for instance, through like an evergreen post, they're just watching some random trend that like has no significance or impact anymore,
Yeah, and I think there is something to say for balance. Like I am totally okay. And
Yeah.
if my client brings something to me and they're like, I would love to do something with this, I am more than happy to see where that fits for them. And
Hmm.
I think we need that balance. People need to be entertained, but they also need to know what you do. Like
Yeah.
I think a lot of people skirt around like the selling aspect because everyone we live in this like area where people are like, I don't want to sell. Like, newsflash, if you are on social media for your business, you are selling. You are
If you
selling.
have a
Like,
business period,
you're
like
selling.
you are selling. Like that is business.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm like, what, like, you don't just sit and talk to your wall. Like, you're trying
Yes.
to communicate something to people.
I think the thing that people have with the word like selling and sales though is that like they're seeing it in one way, and this like traditional like get on the phone cold calling, I'm going to pitch you,
Yes.
and like, you know, it's not that. Like there are creative ways that you can still sell. And you also, selling doesn't necessarily mean buy my product, here it is, and showcasing it in the video. You know, like there's a way to convince someone to to buy your product, right, and using these different selling strategies that doesn't necessarily do that. So if you're creating
Yes.
this reel and you're featuring your product doing something that's like out of the
Yes.
ordinary, or I don't know, like a video that might be inspiring, that evokes some kind of emotion that moves people, that you feel will resonate with individuals, whatever like the messaging is behind it, and your product happens to be involved in that like script
Yes.
or narrative, that's where it's basically like a commercial without the piece at the end being like
Yeah. With the
buy
ad
this. Yeah,
placement.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's telling a story and like incorporating your product or service in that story in a way that's not so like pushing in your face. So like there is a way to sell and be creative about it that isn't like the old
Yes.
school like, here it is, buy my product, you know, push push push.
Yeah, you don't have to sit there and be like, let me tell you the 27 uses for
Yeah, we're
this
not on the
new
shopping
soda
channel.
I've invented. No, like we're not
Yeah.
doing that, but there is a way to like entertain, like, I always say like doing like an interview with people on the street, trying different sodas. I'm just going on. I
Yeah.
don't work with the soda brand, but if you were going to do that, like things that are entertaining, they don't jump on a trend. You're creating your own entertainment pieces off of it. And I think that people miss the mark with it a lot.
Hmm.
And I get a lot of pushback, especially in my industry, because like we have that old, I say industry, but like in when I'm playing with like doctors, like law firms, like dentists, like they just have this age old, like, oh, I'm going to look silly. And I'm like,
Hmm.
no, the whole point is, does anyone like going to the dentist? Sorry for all the dentists out there, like to burst the bubble, but like nobody likes going to the dentist.
I
If
mean,
you're
listen, I
going, it's
will go on
because,
the record and say I don't hate it. Because listen, they're doing a great job. Like I'm leaving there feeling like $1 million. But like, yeah, I have a good experience with the
right?
dentist, but some people don't love it. I get that.
Yeah, a lot of people have anxiety over the dentist,
Yes.
and like I'm like
Yeah.
they don't know you. If the environment is say like is comfortable, if they've seen you online and they're like he has a personality, he's someone I know, he's someone I like, I've developed this like
Yeah.
like understanding with him, they're more likely to choose you over somebody else. So like I'm
Yeah.
not talking about sitting there and dancing in front of the camera, but you have to
No.
give some sort of substance so people can see into you and who you are, because like another big thing is people will be like, well, why is that relevant? I'm not
Hmm.
talking directly about my product. And I'm like, but you're talking about you. And I think a lot of people misunderstand when they need to be that forefront and people really need to understand them,
Hmm.
versus like taking a backseat from your marketing. And I think there's a time and place, but um, yeah, I get into these conversations a lot, and
Well,
and I
because
always want to say like you are.
Yeah,
No,
because
go,
you
sorry.
also work with like you said work with like dentists and like like lawyers and things like that. So these more, I guess, like dry professions, if you were to say, you know, you're not working with like a
Try.
fashion brand,
Yes.
yeah, or something where you could be a
Yes.
little bit more playful. So it's like, how do you pull out the essence of who they are? And a lot of the times these whether it's a law firm or a dental practice as an example, you know, there is a main person at the forefront who's like running the
Yeah.
show. And oftentimes when that's the case, the people that you hire around you are a reflection of you too, and an extension of you as well.
Yes.
So
Yes.
it doesn't mean that just because like you own the practice, for example, that like it has to be your face there, but maybe there's someone else within the company that reflects the same like values and energy and can can make people feel comfortable and welcome, and that they can trust you, that they would be supportive.
Yep.
I think that all of those characteristics, when it comes to those types of professions, like that trust aspect comes within all of those qualities, right? So again, if it's not
Yep.
you necessarily, because like we said, it is not for everybody, and we're not going to like force anyone to like do something where
No.
they're like, this is really not for me. It might be
Yeah.
helpful. But you know, like even for Nomad Creative, like I have these podcast clips that come out that are supportive, that are clips of me speaking on topics that would be supportive for my clients in branding and marketing and social and all that stuff.
Yep.
But we've also brought on other creatives who are experts, who deliver similar spiels in reels that are educational, that have the energy, that are smiling, that are welcoming. And it's the same energy that I would give off, right? It's like, I mean, at the end of the day,
Yes.
everyone's different, everyone's individual, but like the underlying energy that you want to give off, I think that that's like the main thing that you want to be like disseminating across your channels, is to get that feeling,
Yeah.
right?
Well, I always say, I'm like, the worst thing that you could do with your marketing is leave people with an experience that when they get to your front door, you can't mimic. That's the worst.
Oh,
Like if
yes,
you're
that's
like,
good.
hey, we're gonna like, show this playful environment with our, front desk staff and our dentist and this, and you get to that front, like that shop, and they're not like that at all,
Yeah.
people will feel that and be
Disconnect.
like,
Yeah.
yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I like try with my clients and with myself. Like, if you look at any one of my videos, the way I'm speaking to you right now is the way that I speak in all my videos, because I don't
Hmm.
want it to come across like I'm going to try and look as put together as possible. Anyone that knows me knows I'm not a put together human being. I will never be like that. So I'm going to show the most authentic version of myself, because I
Hmm.
want people to feel comfortable when they see me. They're like, oh, I've already gone through this. I've seen you.
Yeah, for sure. I get that definitely. And I like the connection between like, okay, you have these videos on Instagram, for instance, that people are resonating with, and then they walk through the front door and they get a totally different experience. That literally
Yeah.
goes for any marketing or brand material that you have, right?
Yep.
That kind of
Yep.
consistency. So we're talking very much about like the emotion and how we're making people feel, but it goes beyond that too, towards like the aesthetic and how it looks, right? Like your color
Yep.
palette, your fonts, having that consistency, that same brand experience throughout is super important. I talk about this all the time, but this is just a quick little reminder for anyone listening. If this is your first time listening, we have so many episodes on just like being consistent in your brand image and making sure that that translates across
Yes.
all of platforms. To kind of like piggyback off of this concept of, you know, building trust and having amazing clients that are happy with the services that you're doing, you really preach this concept of using your testimonials to leverage your business and use that like within your marketing strategy, right? So let's talk a little bit
Yes.
about that. Like, how can entrepreneurs, especially those who are in the earlier stages, effectively incorporate testimonials into their marketing materials?
Yeah. So, I mean, I love testimonials because I think you could use them in like threefold. So, you can obviously have them like as a stagnant image with
Hmm.
the writing on there, and then you can speak to that experience. You can have video testimonials, which anyone who knows me, I'm a huge fan of video testimonials, because I would say the written word, anything can be written. Yes, the written word is powerful, but I think a video, you see the nuances, you see the authenticity that comes through. So, a video testimonial of your client speaks volumes. But then, like, one of the biggest things that I always lean into, and I find this like again and again when I'm asking people what is their bread and butter, what is that thing that they're doing different, a lot of people can't point to it. I'm like, what is it that you do? And they're like, I'm a dentist. I clean people's, and you don't really get that. So I lean into testimonials, because if you don't know what sets you apart, I guarantee you read through your testimonials and it will tell you what sets you apart. So like
Yeah,
I've
I
had
love
clients
that.
that are I have clients that are
Hmm.
trying to showcase, like, they're like, hey, we're going to be like prim, proper, professional. And I'm like, all of your testimonials talk about how you treat people like family, and you take a business that's very cut and dry and you let people in an extra layer. And I'm like, you're trying to do the opposite on your socials right now. Why not lean into that? Because that's the
Hmm.
experience people are going to get. You, like I said, we want to mimic those experiences. So really leaning into your testimonials to see, what is it that you leave your clients feeling like?
Yeah.
And I ask my clients this all the time. So let's say you don't even have testimonials or you only have one client, have a conversation with them, really listen to them about,
Hmm.
what it is that, because your clients will tell you. I've had my clients be like, you know what, like, you made that experience being in front of the camera so much easier. I don't know how you did that, but you did it. And
Hmm.
you have to start listening to that and leaning into it with, okay, maybe that's what sets me apart.
Yeah.
We all have this nice idea in our heads, like, I want to be set apart this way, but like, there's nothing like an actual testimonial from your client to show you, oh, like, this is where I should be leaning into because this is me.
Yeah, that's actually such a great starting point too, because like you said, not everyone will see like where they're strongest. And that often is highlighted when others point that out. And I actually want to share a little story. This happened like a week and a half ago or so. I
Yeah.
I'm still involved with all of our clients, but more like at the approval stage. So I don't join in all of the meetings all the time because I have an amazing team and I really trust them to do all of that best work. But one of our girls, she's going on mat leave. So I'm chiming in a little bit more than usual because I'm going to support to finish up the project while she leaves. And I've met this client a few times. We've been working with them for a couple of months, and we're finally done the branding for them. We did a rebranding of their logo. And they had very specific parameters because they didn't want to go too far from their original design to this new design. And they still wanted to have this concept of like safety and reliability and like not too far from the palette and still within the palette. So we had all these restrictions, but at the same time, like, we knew that their brand was outdated, we knew that their brand needed work. But they were like a little bit afraid of the potential. So it was a matter of kind of like finding that middle ground. And I think that my team did such an amazing job at presenting two options for the creative direction, as we usually do. They were happy with both. We found that nice middle ground. We finally created a logo that like they were super excited about and resonated with. And on this call that I happened to be on, we had our discussion. They had the final approval of the logo. Creative direction was already established prior to that. And he went out of his way. He's like, guys, before we get off this call, I really just want to say something. And I'm thinking like, oh shit, like you never know. You're always
Oh
thinking like the
no.
worst. Yeah.
In the call.
But yeah, but he was like, I just want to say like how happy I am with how things have gone so far. Like
The
we know
best.
what we do as a company, but like we just don't have the creative ability to take all of these keywords and what we represent and bring them into visual form. And we really feel like you guys have done that. And we're so excited about like the way that things are looking so far. And you know what? We want to move forward and hire you guys to now do our whole website. And so he had given us all of these amazing compliments. And it's like, I know that the team does a great job, but it's like when you hear that back,
The best.
it's such an amazing feeling. And like the things that I said and the things that he said and the things that I heard were that we were able to translate his idea and the vision, mission, values of his company into visual form. And that's something that his team didn't have the ability to do. Right. So
Yes.
that's where we come in. That's where we're able to support. And just that, if that were a testimonial, that's what I would pull from it. Right. So, and that's just a conversation.
Exactly.
So, anyone listening, like if you're having these conversations with your clients, do the same thing. Like, really pay attention and listen. Don't just go in one ear out the other. Number one, if they're fucking complimenting you, take it and feel it and
Take
live
it.
by it. Yeah.
Yes.
Soak it in, really, because, it's not always the case. Like sometimes you're dealing with like tougher situations. Like there's always fires to fight. But when these
Always.
instances happen, really take them in. And that's the other thing. It's like, some people will write the testimonials, which is great. I love it. But it's like to even stop a conversation to be like, before we go, that's a lot. Like that means a lot. They don't have to do that,
That's
right? They don't
no,
have
and
to.
that's huge. And I think it even goes beyond just the testimonial side. I think, and that kind of shifts into mindset, not to shift it here, but, I think a lot of people, especially when you start a business and there's a lot of uncertainty, you get really bad imposter syndrome. It's like
Mhm.
it can get really bad when you're like, hey, like, especially if a client ends a contract, a lot of times people will tell you when they're not happy. It's like,
Yes.
you
They
gotta
will.
know that,
They will tell you. It's not they
oh,
might, they will.
they will. But it's also knowing, like, it's taking those like good moments and going, oh my gosh, like, I had a client last month say like the last 2 months in his 8 years of business have been his best months ever.
Amazing. Yeah.
And I'm like, taking something like that, yes, I could take that for a testimonial, and I will.
Yeah.
But at the same time, for me, it's like, whenever I have moments where I doubt myself and I'm like, am I doing the right thing? Is this the right thing? Like, you lean into that.
Hmm.
Like that is actually the most rewarding part about doing my business, is like getting a testimonial like that, because I'm like, I've actually impacted somebody's business and in turn somebody's life. And
Yes.
and that is kind of why we do what we do.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, I love putting it that way too, because I think that like in anyone doing their job and running a company, you will think like, what is my why? What am I doing? And like, I had this for a while too. It was like, oh, because I'm not like feeding the poor or like solving poverty, you
That
think
you're not
that
doing
what you're
anything.
doing is not as important as like those bigger problems. And it's like, it's different. And it's okay that it's different. And not everybody can be a part of the same mission either. It doesn't mean that you might not support those things, but if you have a skill set and you're able to help and support people and change their lives, like my business changed my life and the way that I'm able to live and support myself and my family and travel and do all these things, right? So like how come me helping other people to get to that point to do the same thing, it doesn't have as much impact as, helping people get off the street. Like it's a very different subject, but at the same time, it has the same as much
Oh
impact,
yeah.
you know?
Yeah, I know. And I
Yeah.
think people really need to, you know what, put respect on marketers' names, people. I think that's what people need to, when you learn anything from this. No, it's just like people, people's opinions I have seen, and, it's something that I've had to learn. It's something that a lot of people in this industry, like I talk to a lot of people that are like, you know, people are like, they don't believe in me with this, they've said this. You know
Mm,
what, people are always going to talk.
yeah.
And you're not doing this. Like, I didn't start my business going, what is everyone else going to think? I started my business being like, I first of all need to make money doing this. I've told
Yeah.
everybody I'm doing this,
Hmm.
and I'm going to do it for me. Like, I don't care. It's okay, so people saw me on TikTok and maybe they've had a comment or two. I do not care. I'm
Yeah.
building this business for me. It's
Hmm.
something that I enjoy, and I'm helping my clients. And honestly, that's all I can really ask for.
Yeah, people will always have something to say, honestly.
Ugh,
Going back to the
can't make
testimonials
everyone
though,
happy.
no, you can't. And that's normal. I think like as you like grow up too, you start to realize that more and more. Like
Yeah.
when you're younger, it's just like I think naturally most people have that people pleasing tendency. But the
Yes.
older you get, the less you care. Not that we're that old, but
Not at all, but it's the best thing about being in my 30s now. I'm like, you
yeah.
have less of a care about what other people think. You're like, I'm not doing it for you. I'm doing it for
Yeah.
me.
Yeah, for sure. And that comes with like personal development and all of that stuff as well. Like that mindset element is super
Yes.
important. But before we get into that phase, I want to just quickly go
Yes.
back to the testimonials because we spoke briefly about, those written testimonials and video testimonials, how video testimonials are so impactful. I've seen this on a lot of like landing pages through sales funnels and stuff, like doing research. We have a lot of written testimonials. We don't have any video testimonials. I would love to do that. And I've thought about doing that, but it's already like pulling teeth, sometimes trying to just get that freaking written one. That it's like, how have you found success in asking someone to actually get in front of the camera and then also like be like make sure it's good, because like sometimes it's like
Yeah. You're like,
lackluster,
oh,
you know? They're like, hey, so yeah, they did a really good job. And, some people are just like that. And like, they won't be as like enthusiastic, I guess, in their delivery. So it's like, I don't want to like waste my time and then ask for a video and it be like, wah, wah, when I could have gotten like a written
yeah.
one and then like help my ranking on Google. And then it's like, do we want to
Yeah.
ask for both? Is it too much? Like, what do you suggest someone do in their business when it's like time to request that testimonial at the end of a project, for instance?
Yeah, so I mean, I'm very persistent. But also I like, well, I will see a client, and if I'm shooting for them and I know it's one of the last times I'm shooting for them, I'll be like, "Hey, can we wrap this up with a testimonial?"
Oh,
And
so you're
if
already
you're
there with
like,
them. You're
I'm
already
already
there with
there,
them
but
with the
I've
camera.
also, yeah, but
It's
I've also
different.
gone on a Zoom call like this. Like, I've done
Okay.
a Zoom call before where I'm like, "Hey,
Oh,
like,
that's fucking smart. And then you just like
yeah,
clip it together. But what you have to
clip."
ask their permission, obviously.
Yeah. So the same way I would if I was at a shoot, I'd be like, "Hey, can we wrap up with a testimonial?" And if it's a client that is like, they don't, them like not smiling is them happy. Like if you know that's what you're getting,
Yeah.
I queue with questions. Actually, a lot of what I do with video, like not even just a testimonial, is queuing people with questions because you bring out the most like authentic form of them when you ask a question and let them just answer. So like
Yes. Yeah.
I'm like, no scripts, like what was it like working with me? If you could, highlight one thing that we did, what is something that like you really liked, and XYZ. I might ask like two or three questions, and some of it is just like off the cuff. I'll be like, let me just ask right now, and it might lead into other questions, and then I just cut it from there.
You know what? I'm pretty sure that story that I told, like the call was recorded when he said that stuff. Like it was like recorded
See, yeah.
presentation, just for like internal
So you
purposes.
should look
I
and then
wonder.
be like, is it okay?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, because like
I
it
think you
was just
should.
like
That's a
so
huge
authentic.
testimonial.
It was so authentic and
Yeah.
it was so cute. Um okay, that's actually a really good idea. The only thing I find is like when you do that though, unless you're asking them to like repeat the question back, you're not
I
getting
know.
like
Then
always like a
it's a little weird.
full, yeah, a full like answer. But it could be more like interview style, like reality TV. It's like when we ask you a question, basically like repeat the question before answering it, or
Repeat.
like state the question in your
Listen,
answer, kind of.
reality TV is what I base all my strategy off of.
No,
Okay, you heard it here first.
no way. In what
I love
sense?
reality TV. No,
Me
like
too.
I just the queuing of questions, and like I've done like I just love reality TV. I love when it like breaks that fourth wall too. Like
Yeah. The
I
behind
think
the scenes
there's
shit,
a
I'm
place
die
for
for.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like I do a lot of like, and people find it funny, but like even like things like bloopers for my clients, I'm like, I'm gonna do them because it really shows like you get the laugh, you get you get someone's real personality when they don't know if it's gonna be recorded or not or filmed or not. So like
Yeah.
you get that, and then the queuing of questions really I found is just like I love that. Like even if you hear my voice and I'm asking the question, it's like I'm okay with that. I'm okay with it not being always that most like the most prim and proper,
Hmm.
because it does break that fourth wall in a sense of like, oh, like there is somebody there doing that. Yeah, there's somebody there doing that. It's me.
Yeah.
I'm doing this work. Like so I'm okay with that. But it also depends too, right? Like I just don't want it to be a script. I would rather get an authentic piece than a scripted piece, but it's saying exactly what I want to say.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. And I ditto. I agree. Is ditto even the right word in that context? I feel like it's not. Anyways. Okay. One quick last question before we get into the mindful minute. What advice would you give to entrepreneurs who are struggling with self-doubt and like finding their authentic voice in marketing? So we spoke a lot about that. So someone who might be having some challenges finding their voice, being authentic, what would you suggest they do?
I'd say one, you need to do a lot of self work if you're gonna like I think putting yourself out there online, starting a business, it brings about a lot of mindset challenges and like self development things that you really need to work on. So I'd say work on that stuff early, and like question those thoughts that you have. I remember having thoughts of like, oh, I couldn't do that. Why? Like dig
Hmm.
into the why of why and you know what? It could be, hey, I don't want to go after this client because it's not a good fit. But what if the reason for that is because, hey, when I was 7, I was drilled into my mind that, money doesn't sleep and I'm not willing to do that because I don't want to end up that way. So that's why I'm not going for it. You don't know what's hidden beneath. So I think like really challenge when you're feeling that way and figure out where it's coming from. Because if it shows up in this sense, it's going to show up in every aspect of your life. So I'm
Hmm.
like a very big believer in like, in order to start a business or put yourself out there, you really have to work on that like inner self, and really make sure you're bringing out the best version of it. So do that, and then also just do it. Like like I think you kind of have to like listen to that inner like gut of, hey, this was authentic to me and this is something that I'm proud of. If you're getting that, maybe I shouldn't put it out there, ask yourself if you don't want to put it out there because of you, like it's genuinely what you like don't or do want to do, or if you're saying, I wonder what other people are going to think. If it's what other people are going to think, I always say at the end of the day, people don't pay your bills. You pay your
Hmm.
bills. So you need to do it because it's right for you and not really care. Like everyone is going to talk no matter what. That's it. Like just do it anyways.
Yeah, I love it. This might even segue into your mindful minute where like I want you to share one piece of advice that you learned throughout your career so far. It could be in your personal
Yeah.
life, it could be in your business, but something that maybe we can't learn in a textbook that you would want to leave people with today.
Okay, one of the biggest things, because I'm seeing it all over, you see the inspirational stuff and you see people talking about how amazing it is to be a business owner. Like you see all of those, right? Like, and I just want people to understand that while it is the most rewarding thing I have ever done, it's also one of the most challenging things I have ever done in my entire life. And
Mm,
there is going to be good and bad that comes with anything that you do. I think a lot of people live in this like everything needs to be perfect and I need to love every aspect of what I'm doing. And even though I absolutely love what I do, there are things, and I'm sure you could say the same, there are some things that I hate doing that
mhm,
are still in regards to my business, but I just, it doesn't mean you don't do it. It just means there's good and bad to everything.
mhm,
And I think people are really busy trying to find that thing that, like, you know, sets them on fire or fuels their soul. And I think there are a lot of things that fuel my soul, but there's also downsides to everything. So I think people are kind of like really quick to pull the trigger and be like, this isn't for me because they hit one little bump. And
yeah.
I think there has to be some tenacity with what you do. And it doesn't matter if it's a business, it doesn't matter if it's starting a new sport, it doesn't matter what it is. Like there has to be tenacity with what you do. Um, because it's never just going to be smooth sailing. I've never heard about a good story where there was only smooth sailing and that was it,
Well, no,
ever.
all the biggest
Yeah.
millionaires, billionaires, quadrillionaires in the world have
Yeah.
they define their stories through their failures, right? And those basically being seen as lessons and them growing and learning from there. But on that note though, just to add to what you said, um, I do feel like I actually lost my train of thought. I don't think I've ever lost my train of thought. This is the first time I've lost my train of thought on the podcast. But you know what? It's okay. It's okay because we're done. You know what? What the heck? No, you know what? I think I was just like super into what you were saying. That's why it was gone. That's why I lost it. It doesn't matter.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Don't be sorry. You ended on a great note.
Yeah. Oh,
Okay.
I'm glad I ended on a great
Okay.
note.
To wrap, if anyone wants to go to learn more about you, your agency, let us know. Give us all the deets.
Yeah, so you can follow me on Instagram. It's at Lex and Co Marketing. You can follow me on TikTok. I don't have a Lex and Co Marketing. I just had it as Alexa Suguitan because I really am my brand. So Alexa Suguitan. I'm sure she'll
It'll be
spell
in
it
the
out
show.
for you, or
Yeah, it'll be in the show notes.
Suguitan. Show notes.
Hmm.
And you can email me, contact at lexandco.ca if you have any questions. I'm super open to people, like if they want to talk business, if they want to talk starting their own business and having advice. Like I just love talking about what I do and kind of helping other people navigate what I've really like stepped into shit over and being like, don't do that. I'm so open to talking. Send me a message.
Amazing. Okay, before we wrap up, I remember what I was going to say.
Oh, yay.
Because
Okay.
we were talking about like how, you know, when you run a business, there's certain things that you don't like and you kind of have to do this and that. And I will say like, yes, that's a thing. And even once you start to like build a team and you do have other people to kind of like come in and support you and you're able to kind of like let go of the things that you're maybe not strongest at or you don't love, you might still feel those things, but also know that like there is a way to minimize the like things that you don't like doing and minimize like the bad days and stuff,
Yes.
if you will, right? Because you're able to get that support. And so I think some people steer away from bringing other people in because they think like maybe it's like a budget thing when first starting out, maybe it's an ego thing, like they don't want anyone else involved. But like what I'll say is just like know your strengths and then focus on
Yep.
those things. And then one thing that I've kind of come to realize in my business is like over the last 7 years, I've let go of so many of the creative elements. And I used to be the creative myself, right? And so now I'm definitely more on like the business and the sales side of things, which is fine. And there's certain things that really light me up with that, but I kind of feel like there's something missing in there. And a word of advice that I received from a mentor was to sometimes jump in on some projects. Doesn't mean I have to jump in on all of them because I can't, like I just don't have the time. I also think my team does an amazing job. So it's not to take away from anything that they're doing, but instead it's more just like, hey, for me, I love this part of the creative process. Let me jump in and like
Yeah.
work on this client, like do like a couple clients a year instead of like all of them, you know? And so there's like a good balance, or like joining certain meetings, or like taking maybe one of the 5 steps of the process, like taking the lead on that. So there are ways to kind of balance that out, to let go of the things that you don't love doing so much. But like you said, at the end of the day, there will always be ups and downs regardless of how much you try and control it. Like even if
Yes.
you've built up the most amazing perfect dream role for yourself, like shit will hit the fan sometimes, and like that's okay. Just know that that's normal, and to keep pushing through because you can.
Yes. I don't want to even add anything. That is how you should
Boom,
end
we're
it. You
done.
can.
You can.
Yes.
All right, guys. Thank you so much for listening to this episode. I really love this conversation. I hope that you did, and we'll see you next week. Bye.